Okay, well, welcome to the first ever Solitude podcast. My name is Liam, and with me today, I have a very special guest. His name is Louis. How's it going, Louis?
Hey everyone, good to be here. Very excited.
Well, we've actually kind of corresponded a little bit before we met together on this screen, just over emails. But this is our first time kind of meeting in person,
Yeah,
even though it's just a
very
screen.
2022, isn't it? Very
Yeah,
2022 to do a Zoom virtual meeting.
I guess we could say it's because there's COVID like rampant in Perth right now, but it's probably also just really convenient to do this.
Yeah, it is easy. It is much easier. It's true. We can just sit both in our bedrooms and make it happen.
Yeah, that's right. So, look, man, I've got to say, just thank you so much for being willing to come on this podcast. I don't really do this a whole lot, especially on Zoom, and I'm just kind of giving it a go to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to just seeing how this goes and looking forward to what we can discuss. But firstly, I wanted
For sure.
to kind of just ask you to introduce yourself and yeah, just kind of talk a little bit about the music that you're making and yeah, just go from there, man.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm a musician from Perth, Western Australia. I played in a few local bands around here, sort of like casually over the last few years, but then always had an idea of, what if I tried to do it a bit more seriously myself in terms of, I do love like the indie rock sound and things, but I always felt like there could be more interesting music being made that sort of had more production elements to it. And so I guess it was about last year that I decided, after a lot of COVID lockdowns and live gigs weren't really happening, I was sort of had the idea to try and focus more on creating music just myself and putting it out. And essentially over the last year, it's just sort of grown in my interest in mainly understanding like the music business and the idea of marketing behind it, supposed to not just the music has really come along. And I just put out sort of my first, what I would describe as my first attempt at taking things a bit more seriously, which was an EP. And yeah, just sort of taking it release by release, seeing what happens and trying to sort of figure this whole thing out bit by bit because it's become confusing but also quite exciting.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to ask you a little bit further on about that kind of back end, more industry stuff that you were talking about um, just briefly there, because I think there's some really interesting stuff that you're doing that I've been following on your YouTube, which we'll also talk
Yeah.
about. But let's start off by talking about your new EP that's come out, because it only recently came out a couple of weeks ago, right? It's called Thesis,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah. Correct.
So, and like you were just kind of briefly saying, you've you've kind of stepped away from like the band thing and you're just doing um, your kind of solo project at the moment and doing a lot of it on your own and seeing how much kind of traction you can get on your own. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it essentially came to the thing where there's sort of two different approaches you can take. I've noticed, particularly within Perth, it's either you sort of cut your teeth playing live and you sort of build a fan base by playing live, and then you take what popularity you have and you take it to a studio and you record. But I sort of noticed that a lot of the more international, sort of bigger acts that have a bit more of a global audience, what they do instead is they don't even worry about playing live. They just set about like recording, creating the best music they can, building up a fan base, and then once you've achieved that, you sort of transition towards, all right, now we'll start playing it live. And so because I'd already done sort of the band side of it, where you play big gigs, but you play small gigs as well, where no one's there, and you sort of do that. I was more interested in being like focused on that side of it. Um, yeah, so that's essentially was my idea about it, was create music that I didn't even know how you play it live, to be honest with you. I'm sort of in the process now of talking with another guy about doing it, but the main focus was just make an EP, have some pop songs, have some produced stuff, have some indie rock, and just see what happens with that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's not to say like that the band side of thing or like the live show thing isn't really cool and like the groundwork of a
No,
lot
no.
of like up and coming musicians, right? Is it? Because
Of
it
course.
still is like a huge part, but I really like that you're kind of trying that sort of different avenue, through
Yeah.
the internet and doing your own thing and seeing if you can kind of grow like this little following or just see what happens, right?
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to
more or
see.
less. Yeah, I mean, I think another thing about it, which I always thought was interesting, was this idea of if you if you target playing shows like live, like sort of
Mhm.
like, Spacey Jane, and they sort of did that where they sort of said build up a local fan base and then from there use them as like your core audience to transition bigger. But then there's other acts like I guess more pop modern ones like Jeremy Zucker or Dayglow is a really good example if you've ever heard of him. He just
I haven't
totally
actually.
focused on just fully make it in his room, put it out, and then see what happens from there and see if it gathers the traction that made it, in his opinion, worth it to play live. Because undeniably, as sort of everyone gets older, time becomes shorter, and just even getting live shows ready and committing Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights becomes harder and harder. So it's
Yeah,
just
totally.
it's an issue of so many things. But yeah, you're totally right. You can do it either way. You can do it both, and either way can get you the thing. It's just trying stuff out that works for you.
Yeah. Was that Dayglow that you said is an example of someone who's kind of done the bedroom thing?
Yeah, he's from Texas. He's like a little sort of bedroom indie guy that I think you could almost argue he's the most successful of all of them. Like he's playing Slender in the Grass coming up. He's doing
Yeah,
Australia
right.
shows that are all sold out and everything. And here's another one who's, if you're interested in the process of how it happens, like his journey, which he's put all online and stuff, is a super inspiring but also this interesting one just to see how he did it. But similar sort of thing. I think he did a similar idea to what I was sort of trying to do in that regard.
Mm, yeah, cool. And how's the reception been to this EP that you put out? I noticed that you put a couple of videos on YouTube about the reception, but yeah, I'd like to know if that's developed at all, because that was a week or two ago as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I was happy with it in terms of, I mean, you can only set your own expectations, can't you? But um, it did in terms of, I sort of was trying to judge it by Spotify metrics. I guess was my main one to judge it by. I mean, there's so many ways you could, but Spotify was my main one, and I was happy. It hit. I think right now it's at like 13,000 streams or something in total after 3 weeks, which is so much better than anything else I've done.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really solid, man. Congratulations.
yeah, it definitely it feels good. But then as I've found out as well, it's sort of like you numbers are great and you can get the streams and you can do all that through marketing and things like that. But there's an element of like you want to achieve a some more like goals or landmarks, which are like getting played on radio stations or reaching a certain amount of followers or getting in publications, which are things that I'm now sort of aiming towards more
Mm.
now that I'm happy with the numbers. But no, I'd say I'm super impressed. Everyone's been so nice about it. It seems that enough people that like it that I'd be happy with. So yeah, I'm really happy.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I guess we'll get back to plugging the EP at the end of the chat as well, but
Yeah,
you kind of alluded to another point that I really wanted to chat to you about, and you also talked about this in a little bit of depth on your YouTube channel and your last video that you brought out. So you built like um, this nice little groundwork of a bit of a following. You've got like a few thousand streams happening on Spotify. And what you said, which I found really interesting, is that you kind of felt like you got the numbers that you wanted, or even maybe a little bit more than what you
yeah,
were expecting. Um, but you still, for whatever reason, like you just said, didn't really get much people in the kind of, I think you said like
yeah,
Australian zeitgeist
yeah,
media noticing you, which,
yeah,
if we were to expand on, would be like your Triple J's, like the music.com.au, Tone Deaf, like those sorts of places, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that, despite the fact that you did actually pull out some pretty good numbers, that, you just didn't
Yeah,
get noticed by like the kind of zeitgeist, as you called it?
yeah. So it's a super interesting one, and it's not like when I speak about this, I'm trying not to come across as like the cynical kind of like
Mm,
nihilist, like it was just random and luck and whatever. But the way that I've sort of see it and understand is it could be a combination of different factors, and I guess it's up to people's interpretation as to what they think it's more of. But obviously the first thing you got to qualify is like, is your music good enough? Like you have to hit
Yeah.
a standard where you say it's pleasant to listen to or whatever, right? So
Mm.
let's say you've hit that, which might already be hard enough in itself, but let's say you get
Yeah.
above that level where you think it's good enough that, you know, it sounds like other songs on Triple J or whatever, then I think it must come down to either luck in terms of maybe someone listens to a song on the right day and decides to play it. It can come down to sort of nepotism, like do you know someone within Triple J or someone who can somehow have sort of influence, or your brother's friend is the, you know, the bassist in Spacey Jane or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Or, and then the last one I can see is like, to an extent, just your budget. Like if you have, I sort of solemnly believe that if you had $1 million and you have a song which is okay, you could get it pretty much everywhere. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that that's wrong and that system is wrong or whatever, but there's just a few instances where you look at certain artists who have really big followings that never get on Triple J, and then there's certain artists who have no following who get on Triple J, and there doesn't really seem to be a pattern to it.
Mm.
If, you know, because my idea was if I achieve these numbers, Spotify based sort of thing, surely that's sort of an indication that it will be good enough for that, but it didn't, you
Mm.
know, transpire that way. And so I can only guess it's a mix of these things. In terms of which one more, I don't know, but that's sort of my thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're kind of at least in the right ballpark with your assessment there. You're correct in saying, in my opinion, that it's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
guess we are just kind of making a lot of assumptions. And that's kind of like what I've done a little bit as well on some of the videos that I've made on my YouTube channel, where I'm talking about
Yeah.
Triple J and their influence in the Australian music media.
Yeah.
I kind of talked about that a little bit in the one I made about Spacey Jane, which you kind of also alluded to a few minutes ago, how they kind of made this really strong local following through playing a lot of live shows, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually got picked up by Triple J. So, you know,
Yeah.
they're a good example of a band who, you know, really worked hard to get played on Triple J. And I think
Yeah.
probably another fact that we need to allude to is that, you know, Triple J doesn't mean everything for finding a following or finding
Yeah.
streams and success in Australian music, but they sure as hell like do a
Yeah.
lot. Like they're definitely a bridge from being okay following to like pretty good following to like massive following in Australia. So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
don't get played on their station, like, and you play and you make alternative music in Australia, then you're really disadvantaged. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you
But
know the band Old Mervs?
I don't know that band. No.
So they're another one where they're just this two-piece surf rock band from
Mhm.
Perth, and they're really popular, like something like
Oh
50,000
yeah,
monthly
actually, the
listeners.
Perth band, Old Nerves. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
of
yeah,
them, and I've heard this. I've heard a couple of their songs.
yeah.
Just
And so
came across them streaming.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
And so in my eyes, they're like the perfect Triple J candidates. Like they've got a surfy Australiana vibe. They're very
mm,
genuine. They're great musicians, whatever. And I just remember the other day I was talking to one of the guys, and so they're big. Some of their songs have over 1 million streams on
yeah,
Spotify.
right. Now they've probably got
And he,
like a few thousand followers on Facebook and Instagram as well,
yeah,
right? Probably pushing
yeah,
like
for sure.
10,000 maybe.
Yeah, they're by no means anything to scoff at or whatever. And the other day I was talking to him, and he was like, "Man, we got played on the first time, like on Triple J, after we'd already hit like 1 million streams. Like,
Mhm.
so you know what I mean? Like, there
Yeah.
was no indication. They just suddenly they didn't get played for whatever reason, and then they did.
You know, I think hitting 1 million streams, and I'm just kind of guessing, maybe like creating a bit of a conspiracy here, but I think once you hit 1 million streams, Triple J definitely notices you.
They have
Um,
to. They have to.
they have to, right? Because I know, like
Yeah.
Spacey Jane, for example, they might have been played on Triple J once or twice, just as a spot play before they hit 1 million streams, with probably like feeding the family.
Yeah.
But once they hit 1 million, that's when they started playing their new releases.
Yeah.
But even
Yeah.
like Feeding the Family, for example, which I think might be their second second highest streamed song on Spotify, if you were to look at the statistics somehow, you would probably find that it's probably not been played on the station like at all, maybe once or twice or something, because it was their second ever single or whatever. And it was when Triple J weren't giving them attention. So yeah, I think that is a super interesting point. And I mean, Old Mervs are just one example, right? There's so many, and all over Australia. And I feel like, especially here in Perth, it's really hard to get noticed when you're so far away. So if you can get to like the 1 million streams, or if you can get to like 10,000 followers on Facebook or Instagram, or kind of points like that, I feel like they must have some sort of like scouting system that their workers have at Triple J, where people are kind of following that. Because at the moment, like, and this is what I've spoken about in some of the videos that I've made, and you also have alluded to in your videos, is that it does kind of seem weird that there's people like that, or bands like that, like Spacey Jane, who work so hard for so long, get nowhere, and then eventually get picked up. And then there's some who just like upload one song to Triple J on Earth and boom. All of a sudden high rotation, right? So I mean, I think that's another really interesting one. And I think there's different examples who have different reasons. So like, for example, one that I talked about in one of my videos is Middle Kids. So, and I love Middle Kids. I think they're an excellent band.
Same.
I've seen them live a couple of times, and they're a great band. And
good.
Their song Edge of Town, when they released it on Triple J on Earth, they hadn't even performed it live, and Triple J put it straight on high rotation. And ever since then, they've had a great following, had a lot of success. And I would say the reason for that song getting played on Triple J on heavy rotation so quickly was just because, like, the first point you raised, because it was so good, it's such a good song that they heard it and they were like, we have to play this, and it just took our breath away when we heard it. But then like, this is when it gets subjective, because there's tens and probably hundreds of other songs that go through that same process of just getting uploaded, and then someone at Triple J hearing it and just being like, oh, this is a good song, or it takes the breath away of someone who works there, and then it just goes on heavy rotation, or is it because of a connection, like, for example, let's say Tones and I, someone who's, gets a lot of flack for being this sort of artist who supposedly, doesn't make good music. And in my opinion, like, comparing Tones and I songs to Middle Kids songs, I would say like that's a pretty good assessment of like some amazing music versus some pretty average music. So yeah, like, that makes me wonder, like, is there a connection there that Tones and I had? Maybe I think she got picked up by a guy who had a lot of money when she was busking, and then he had a connection with Triple J, maybe. Or, it could have just been that someone really liked her song when she uploaded it. And it just went straight there. So, I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? Like, how do you, as a new up and coming local musician who, showed some pretty good numbers when you uploaded your music onto Spotify, battle that? How do you get through that?
You don't want to, because the thing is, well, you don't want to take away from anyone's like idea that they're, every person who's put out music and has got anywhere with it has always worked hard to an extent. They've always, so it's not to take anything away from them. It's just saying that sometimes it's just like, what do you do? It's and it's not even if you talk, not even Triple J, you talk about things like Spotify editorial playlists, which are this massive indicator of, if you get on one, you're going to do pretty well, or at least it's a really good foundation to build upon. And you just, it's so hard to predict and know, especially because, as I'm sure you know, Liam, like, whenever you create a video or put out a song, when you can be as critical as you want about it personally and say, I think this is the best thing ever, I think this is okay, this is average, or at least this is as good as that. I mean, we could just be wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
it could just actually suck. But you'd hope that if you go, well, I think it's this good, and you expect it to get that result, and then it doesn't, you're like, well, what's wrong? Is it the things really? Is it the art itself is really bad? Do I not put in enough effort towards marketing? Is it the connections I haven't made? Makes it confusing and difficult to know what to do better next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, it is almost kind of now at the point where I would just have to say, like, it's just unfair. And it's almost like you don't have any control over it unless you treat it like your full-time job, or something close to it, where you're constantly building and you're constantly grinding away, creating this following that will grow and grow. I think Spacey Jane are probably a good example of someone of a band that did that. Like, I followed them since they first put out their first EP. But I'll admit, like, I didn't follow them closely when their first EP came out. But I did, like, notice it, and I saw it around. But it wasn't until like a year or so after it came out that I noticed that a lot of people were talking about them in Perth. I mean, if you can sort of dedicate that time to building that, and I guess they did it differently to you because they played lots of live shows. But if you can,
and they are amazing musicians,
and they're great musicians too. Yeah, not to take away from that, but if you can find like that sort of different avenue through the internet, maybe that's the way. Maybe that's for you. Have you tried going on like TikTok and all or anything like that? I don't personally like TikTok, but I know it is a sort of interesting sort of medium that people are tapping into now.
Yeah, I mean the way it's sort of described to me, and I think the reality of it is just the necessary evil. So I personally don't like. It's honestly like I don't like TikTok. I've never gone on it voluntarily. Like
I
I've
don't
never.
like it. I've honestly, like, the two words I'd use to describe it would be utter trash. It just like melts your mind. It's literally like a slot machine that your mind's addicted to when you look at it.
I cannot. It's just not me. And the issue though with a lot of music these days, I'm guessing almost any creative medium, art form, like I'm sure YouTube's the same as well. To as much time as you put in towards making the art good, like being really proud of what you're making and stuff, I think you almost have to put in double or at least as much effort as you're putting into that towards your marketing and towards being on TikTok and making viral trends and stuff, because the amount of musicians in the last 2 years and by all accounts, the amount of scouts that labels and look at and everything, it is just TikTok. It's TikTok based. The careers are now made on TikTok.
Really?
Like
I didn't know that, but it's not surprising.
Apparently it's just massive. It's just like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great for reach. Like you can put up a video with no followers and potentially get hundreds of thousands of views if you put up a good video. The problem I find with it is just it's so narcissistic. It's so superficial and like sort of like, look at me, and I'm just like,
it's kind of sick. It's sickening to just be part of it, but
I mean, exactly, it works for some people. Some people just honestly blow up, like go from nothing to millions of fans because they put up a few good TikToks. And so it's not to take away from it, I get it, but sometimes you just want like to put out a song and just be like, listen to my song, it's really good, without having to be like,
Do you know the Perth band Those Who Dream? I do,
yeah. Super interesting one, hey.
They go on TikTok a bit, I think. I've heard that they're getting a little bit of a following there. I read an article about it one time, but I wouldn't personally know because I don't go on TikTok, like I was saying. But the article said that they're growing a bit of a following because of TikTok, and I guess like they kind of tapped into that sound as well. They're kind of like doing that sort of MGK sort of pop punk.
Which
is kind of has a little bit of a niche on TikTok.
Yeah, I reckon they are the perfect example. If you want to look at someone who is focusing on the online marketing, like sure, make good music, but then go all out on the marketing and music videos and TikTok, study them, go look at their pages for an hour, and you'll see what it takes and how much effort and how consistently and how many stories and posts you have to put up to gain an online fan base. And it is like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready to do that, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they would have some sort of management. I'm not too sure. I actually have met them once when I was doing community radio. This was like probably 5, 6, 7 years ago now, though. It was pretty early days for them. But they seemed like they wanted to really like kind of engross themselves into the music world when I saw them. Like they seemed really pretty serious. Yeah, I mean, hats off to them. I think they're doing a good job, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You can never take it away from someone who's just like putting themselves out there and really trying. Because the thing is as well is like what they're doing, I think they will be the first to admit as well, really goes against the Perth trends. You know what I mean?
Does.
Like sort of, they're not a surfy psych sort of like that sort of band. They're like very much like almost this LA pop produced band, which is like not really going to, even if you're the best.
Maybe the Fame.
Yeah, exactly.
Who also, you know, have built a pretty big following without any Triple J or like Australian zeitgeist. Media.
But that's because I reckon that they were smart enough to know that like their music, that they knew not to, like there was this, I remember this quote which sort of like really resonated with me. It was like, when you're putting out music, you're putting it out for the people who will enjoy it, not for the people who won't. So instead of trying to convince people who will never they're just, if you're a hip hop artist, you're not trying to put music out to convince indie rock listeners to like it. You're putting out music for the hip hop listeners. And so I think if you just understand that as you know, you're the Fame or you're Those Who Dream or whatever, you're going, well, we don't really care about Perth. Like, as much as I'm sure they'd love it, we go, we're going to be bigger somewhere else. Let's focus on that. And good on them. It's smart. It's clever. It's marketing. It works.
No, that's really cool. I mean, a really famous example of that that comes to mind is Kings of Leon.
Yeah.
Like they were a band from like the deep south in America who made music. It was kind of weird though. Like they were kind of making sort of like that jangly indie rock, but it really connected with Britain and Ireland and places like that.
Yeah.
And they didn't even try to market themselves in America when they put music out, and they were just like this massive British band who were from America, but you know, and then eventually like Sex on Fire came out, it went worldwide. But that's, you know, it's true. Like if you find a niche and it doesn't even have to be in your home, like just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it with streaming and the online stuff. It's sort of like I knew to an extent that the EP that I was making, just by the nature of the genres and the more pop sort of produced sound I was going for, I sort of had the inclination that it wasn't going to be big here by any stretch. But I was like, oh, I'm okay with that, because the majority of music I listen to and I personally love the most is not like, I love a lot of music from here as well, don't get me wrong, but it is more international based. It's like more the British alt rock or pop LA sound. I'm more into that. So I was just like, oh, you know, whatever, it's for the people who like it, and I hope they like it. So
no, that's a really cool mindset, man. And I'd have to say it's also like in my opinion kind of courageous to go at your music like that. So hats off to you for like just trying to do something different, and see what happens.
I mean, one thing I always found funny, and this is, I don't know if people know this, but like, you know, Troye Sivan.
I do, of course, yeah.
I mean, he's from the hills. He's from the Perth Hills, which is the most, you couldn't expect a pop star coming from, not to take away from the hills, but I think even they did, you would not expect a flamboyant pop star to take over, you know, LA, to come from there. And you know, I don't think he's worried about impressing the people in the hills or, you know, even in Perth.
He's the perfect example of, I guess, what you would, I don't want to say what you're trying to do, because you're not trying to become famous, are you? Just trying to make music. But like essentially the avenue you're taking is the avenue that he took. You know, he made music in his bedroom that was kind of more of like a American sounding sort of music that wasn't influenced by what local musicians in Perth or Australia were making at all. And I don't know, yeah, for whatever reason, like people just connected with it, and he made awesome music that people just loved, you know?
Yeah.
So funny story about Troye Sivan, actually, while we're talking about him. He was, this is really weird, but I just felt like saying it anyway.
No, I'm all for it.
So my sister and her friends went to this comedy show for this YouTuber called Miranda Sings. Have you ever
heard of her? Yeah. She was like an old school YouTuber, wasn't she?
Yeah, probably about 10 years ago, she was at her peak.
Yeah.
I can't stand her, to be honest. She's so obnoxious. I mean, I think, you know, I can see why a lot of people like her, because she's like kind of relatable, especially for like girls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why my sister loved her. She went with her friends, and then when they left the show, they were pulling out of like this main stadium in Perth that it was in, and Troye Sivan and his dad cut my sister off in the car and almost made her crash.
Oh, we hate Troye now. We hate Troye.
It was so random because she came home and she was like, I almost crashed, and it was Troye Sivan's fault. It was so weird. Hey? She just like recognized him through the car.
Small world.
Yeah, I don't think he lives in Perth anymore though.
No, I don't think so. Fair enough.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like I said, perfect example of someone who kind of broke the mold. So yeah, I mean, I hope there's more people out there like him. You know, I really do. And I guess that kind of goes to the point of what I wanted to, or where I was hoping this conversation led to, which is like, you know, Triple J. My first thing I want to say about them is that I think they're awesome, and that I love the fact that they play so much Australian music, and we are so like blessed to have this
for sure
Australia-wide connection where we can all hear great new up and coming music, and the fact that you can just literally put music out on the internet and be played by them, and like everyone in Australia can hear you, is amazing. But you know, that being said, it also gives them a lot of control, you know, and a lot of power. And you know, whether or not that's what they want, it's probably not what they want, but it's just the way that the industry in Australia, especially for Australian music, has kind of evolved into. Which is almost ironic because, you know, radio is technically a dying breed, but there's still like this really strong like position of power that Triple J seems to have for some reason still. Like if you don't get played on Triple J, you won't get put on these Spotify playlists. It almost seems like.
This is sort of the thing. There's like a connection. There's some weird connection. Yeah,
which kind of brings me to the point I'm making, which is like, how do you as a musician go about, you know, trying to you know, swim your way through that, but also how do we, you know, collectively as Australians and like Australian music lovers, and the Australian music industry, you know, move forward with that? Or are there other avenues that we can look at, you know, other than what we've spoken about today, you know? Because like what you said, marketing yourself, going on the internet, promoting it, looking for an audience outside of Australia, all great ideas, except, you know, they're extremely hard and really time consuming. Do you think that there's like a less time consuming option out there that just no one's come up with yet, or no one's created? Or, you know, like what's the alternative to Triple J and, you know, this other avenue that you're taking?
So sort of my approach is, the way I see it is, you can do two things. You can just persevere with what you believe in, what you want to make, and just say, who cares? You're making it for yourself, put it out, right? And do it for 10 years. And eventually you might just build up a fan base, and eventually it'll become a more recognized, appreciated sound. Sure. Nothing wrong with that at all. Something that I want to try though, and this is my idea for the next release, which I don't even know if I should for the sake of transparency, I just like talking about it and letting people know. But my idea with this next song I'm doing, so I've already sent it to a few studios to see if they want to record it. But my idea is just to go create a indie rock Triple J friendly, short, sharp, catchy, like almost like tick off the bucket list of tropes that I think would make a Triple J
Yep.
song, right?
Yeah.
And so this is
I
my
remember
next
you
idea.
talking about this in your video. This is a really cool
Yeah.
idea.
And so it's just essentially like test, like treat each release as like an experiment. And obviously, like I'm going to make sure I like the music and I'm proud of it and I'd be happy to play it, release it and everything, of course. But I'm almost like treating little ones as experiments and saying, you know, if I go to a studio and do it professionally and make it sound like this, was that the missing ingredient? You know, is that the part that suddenly Triple J goes, I love it, let's put it up, we'll play it, awesome. If that's the case, okay, I get it. You just need to cater towards what's popular at the moment, especially on that radio station. In terms of what people can do, or what musicians, anyone can do, I mean, something that I think is, I mean, it's sort of weird to say, but admirable in its own regard. It's just try listen to music you don't usually listen to, you don't usually hear. Like spend 20 minutes a week listening to artists you haven't heard of that might come up on random discover pages. Just because I think, you know, there's the psychological thing where it's just you like sounds you're familiar with, and you know, if a band sounds like that band, sounds like that band, sounds like that band, sounds like that artist, and you like all of them, well, it's like, well, of course you do. But there might be a weird one which doesn't sound like them, which still might be equally as good, but you're not used to the sound. So that's something I've been trying to do recently, is just listen to different music from different places. And there's a lot of great music out there which, for whatever reason, isn't really popular or played in Australia, and just, I don't know, try expand your taste, and you'll only ever enjoy more stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great encouragement. It's probably something that I think we can all say, especially myself. Like I'm, you know, first of all, man, I'm so like, I just like listening to the same sorts of sounds, and that sort of mindset always kind of creeps in. But I mean, that's what I want to try and improve on and do on my YouTube channel a little bit as well, is just kind of help expand my tastes and interests in like Australian and West Australian music. And hope that other people kind of come along with me. I mean, that's what I was hoping to happen, but it's still really early days, obviously. And
I think you're doing so well then. You know so much more about, even you know more about the history of Western Australian music than anyone I know. Like you're well versed in it, which is impressive in its own regard.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah. Not sure everyone will agree, but yeah. I do have, I don't know what it is, but I have like a bit of an obsession with like WA music history. So yeah, you can check out.
You're proud.
Yeah, I guess I'm a proud West Australian person. So yeah, but I hope that in the future, like that there is some sort of like media or some sort of avenue that West Australian artists can kind of better tap into. Because I do feel like there is a little bit of disconnect with Triple J, especially with us here in WA. And you know, that's not to say that like every West Australian person or musician is disadvantaged. But I don't know. I just think that like, I mean, there is from here, and they're like one of the biggest bands in the world right now. So yeah, I know maybe that makes me sound hypocritical, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like I wish there was another option out there sometimes.
Well, undeniably. I mean, imagine, for example, let's say a band wants to tour, right? And you're a Byron Bay based band, and you want to tour, and you want to do, you know, a week-long tour, and you're willing to drive 6 hours up and 6 hours down.
This is a perfect example.
Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. Even if you want to go as far, you can go down to Adelaide. And so you've already hit 6 times the audience that if a WA band wants to go on tour, all right, you can go to Busselton, you can go to Mandurah, you can go to Geraldton, you can go to Margaret River. You know what I mean? And all these places are already kind of, so even if you just take that regard alone, we don't have as much cross-pollination of music, which, you know, the big acts stay big here, but it's really hard for other acts. Even, I don't know. I mean, that makes sense to me.
No, I think that's a perfect example of what makes it a little bit harder for us here in Western Australia to find that audience, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember talking to someone about this issue, and they were saying that like they even found that some artists who were from over east, because they played some shows over there one time, you know, don't even bother putting their hometown on their social medias because
Right.
they just want to be like an Eastern States band, and they think that's
Right.
which, you know, makes sense. I guess it's smart. Like if you want to market yourself just as an Australian band, you know, then
Yeah.
that wouldn't stop you from going up and down all the cities on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah.
you know, it wouldn't like bring like this stigma on you where you'd be like seen as, oh, you know, that's just a Brisbane band and they're here in Sydney, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, if you were just like
Transcend.
a band and people didn't know about your hometown, maybe that's a way
Yeah.
you can kind of just be seen to be like more visible, more relatable, like that sort of thing. But that's just like virtually impossible for us to do here in Western Australia. So
Especially with the borders as well.
yeah,
Makes it even harder.
yeah. But I mean, like we were saying, like, it doesn't mean you can't find an audience. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
you can't connect with all Australians and all people over the world. I mean, there's plenty of good examples we've already been talking about. But yeah,
Yeah.
I really do hope that you know, as a society in Australia and as a music industry, more avenues pop up. Because I was thinking as well recently about this, and I often do have like this conversation that we've, you know, just been having with a lot of people in the music industry and in Perth. And I think it's an important conversation. But something that I was thinking about that I usually say, and I was thinking actually like maybe what I say is not actually accurate, which is like Triple J can be a gatekeeper, right? And that term always gets thrown around, and it's just kind of like an easy go-to way of trying to put Triple J down. And you know, I'm not all about trying to put them down because, like I was saying, I think they do a lot of great things. And it's not really their fault that they have so much power. And I feel like there's a lot of negative stigma on like the term gatekeeping and being a gatekeeper. And I was, you know, I was of that opinion as well, that that's a negative thing. But I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking, you know what, like gatekeepers aren't necessarily bad. It's only bad when there's one of them or two of them. Like if there was 100 gatekeepers, no one would care. You know what I mean? Like if there was 100 or 1,000 gatekeepers, that would be great because that would mean like 100 or 1,000 different avenues for people to be noticed. But it's just the fact that there's probably only like 5, and you know, there's maybe like 2 really big ones out of that 5 in Australia that make it so hard. So that's why I really hope we can just create more places that people talk about music, which is part of the reason why I wanted to make my YouTube channel, I guess. Not that I want to become a gatekeeper, but
I bring it on. You control the taste. You control the music scene.
I don't want that sort of power. And I don't really want that sort of the presence, you know, like it's kind of scary thinking about like the criticism that someone or an organization does get when you do have that amount of power. Like here we are today talking about some of the negative things that Triple J might do, or any, you know, strong or controlling person in the music industry might do. And you know, I don't want to just become that, you know what I mean? So it's I find that balance.
There's like let's just say I much prefer Triple J to exist than it doesn't exist.
Oh,
you know
totally
what I mean?
agree. Yep.
A million percent. And it's not to hate on them. I mean, there's so many examples of like, there's lots of bands in like Canada and other places that say like, you know, thank God for Triple J because we just couldn't get played on our national radio stations because they're so commercial. You know, they're only playing the top 40 sort of Justin Bieber pop-esque sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so they were like, you know, even Australia, thank God Australia has this, which is so true. But you're right, they do have relatively monopoly on a large portion of our taste. And, you know, if you think about the fact that Richard Kingsmill, the sort of, I think he's the music director, I can't remember his official term, but
It's
Yeah.
Nick Findlay now. He's the music
Nick
director,
Findlay, there you
and
go.
then Kingsmill he's kind of like, he oversees all of the stations.
Right, I see.
Yeah,
I mean, for better or for worse, they do have this power of saying. I mean, you remember the whole like Taylor Swift, the Taylor Gate, and all that happened in 2012, and
I
like
made a video
the
about
fact.
it
There you go.
on my
So
channel.
this is like
Yeah.
there's a level of like, some artists will be played, some artists won't.
Yeah.
It is the roll of the dice, but overall, it's a great station. But it's not to
Yeah.
say that. Yeah, I agree with you. We can improve.
Yeah, I'd almost love to be like a fly on the wall in Triple
Yeah.
J sometimes. I'd love to know like what happens, like, let's take like this Middle Kids one, for example, that we were talking about, or that I brought up. How exactly did that go down? How exactly did that get uploaded, Edge of Town, their song get uploaded to the internet and make it from there to heavy rotation, and not say that I don't think that should have happened, because I think it should have, because it's an awesome song, right?
Yeah.
But like, what actually transpires there? And I feel like there's a level of, like, what's the word? Like, not cover up, but lack of transparency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm guessing happens. Someone who works there hears the song, because they must all work 8 hours a day, constantly listening to new music that gets uploaded to Unearthed. And then, someone hears it and they go, wow, that's an awesome song. And they turn to the person sitting next to them and say, check out this song, Middle Kids from Sydney just uploaded this song called Edge of Town, check it out. And a few of them listen to it and they're like, all right, let's put that one down. We'll talk about that one in a meeting. And then, this is what I'm guessing happens. They talk about it in a meeting and then they say, yep, who thinks this song should be on heavy rotation? There's some sort of vote, or it has to be everyone says yes. And then it goes on. It gets on heavy rotation, So that's like random people who work for a not-for-profit government entity who are mostly like below the age of 30, not to say there's anything wrong with being young, but like, I don't know, just lack of experience sometimes can be an interesting topic. Basically deciding whether or not someone can make an income from music for the next 10 years or not.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a good point.
It's just crazy when you think about that. And it's not to say that like, I don't think that should happen. I'm just saying like, that's just really interesting that that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so for example, this is something that I'll openly and shamelessly admit to. I love the 1975. I think their music is fantastic. I think it's so interesting and new and refreshing. For whatever reason, they don't get played on Triple J for some reason, right?
It's a weird one.
Even though I would say I think they qualify sound-wise.
Oh,
what is the difference?
There's totally.
What's the difference between the 1975 and the Glass Animals?
Yeah, perfect.
Like, there's one. They're both huge. They both make weird alt rock. They're both from Britain, but for some reason, someone decided somewhere down the line, them no, them yeah. And it's like, I mean, as you do, but couldn't really understand the thinking why.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think, this brings up another interesting point in that, like, sometimes that changes though, right? Like, there will be an artist who just somehow becomes like noticed by Triple J, or Triple J changes their mind on them. They played Beyonce recently when her Lemonade album came out. I can't think of the top of my head, but there's other examples out there, Like,
Tyler, the Creator, was banned from Australia, and now he gets played on Triple J.
How was he banned from Australia? I hadn't heard that.
So he because of his earlier, when he was first putting out music, there was a lot of like really insensitive, vulgar stuff. But I think he was more just doing it sort of the meme sort of shock value.
Yeah, okay.
And then he was meant to do a tour here, and the Australian government literally banned him from coming to Australia because they said his music promotes, I think it was sexism or violence against women or something along that line.
I think I remember hearing about this now, yeah.
And so Triple J are a government-run station. And so, don't get me wrong, I'm happy they now play him. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, it changes.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting when like social issues kind of clash with that. I mean, the big example is Sticky Fingers.
Yeah, of course.
What happened there, which I'm actually making a video about that too. So
Oof,
look out for that one.
tackling it. I like
Yeah,
it.
I'm kind of nervous about doing that because there's so much like hate for Sticky Fingers, and it's like as soon as
So
people
much.
like see a picture of them or just the name, like people are instantly triggered.
For
But
sure.
I was thinking like, oh, you know what, like my channel's still small right now, like I'm not going to burn
Yeah.
too many people.
Yeah.
I'll
What
just
do you
do
got
it
to
and
lose?
hopefully I'm
No,
to be honest, man, I'm kind of making it for clicks. I'm hoping that people will almost be
yeah,
outraged enough to click on it. So
yeah. But
that's just how it works nowadays.
no, I support it. If you to an extent tell the truth, as in the objective truth about the facts of what has to the best of everyone's understanding, I mean, I think it'll be okay.
That's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to really try
Yeah,
and like talk about it neutrally,
yeah, yeah.
and see if people kind of can take away
Yeah.
good understanding of it, because I think that there is. I mean, I'll talk about this in the video, but I think there is a little bit of unfair, negative bias on them. And not to say that they didn't screw up, because they really did screw up big time.
Yeah. That's so funny. Everything you say about it, you have to sort of like preface everything and be like, like
Yes.
this, but this, and
Otherwise, people will just be like, "Oh, that guy, he's defending that band that is sexist and racist."
You hate
which
women.
therefore makes
hate
me
women.
sexist and racist.
Yeah, I know. But man, I very much look forward to watching that one. That sounds
right. Keep your eye out for
super
that
interesting.
one.
We'll do.
Cool, man. Well, hey, we'll get close to wrapping this thing up. We've been talking for a while. I don't want to take up the rest of your day, but once again, I just want to say, like, I really appreciate you coming on. And like I said at the beginning, this is the first time that I've done this on Zoom. I've done podcasts a little bit before on some other topics.
Nice.
And I also did community radio for a while as well. So yeah, done that. But yeah, Zoom's kind of different. So yeah. Hopefully this kind of works out when the recording's all done and I can chop it up and make it look good. But yeah, no, thanks for jumping on, being the first person and willing to chat. And I really hope that what we spoke about today, some people will watch it and connect with it and maybe share it, which would be awesome. So I wanted to just finish off by going back to your music, because that's also the other really main important thing that this was about. Like I want to be part of the solution to the problems that we were talking about. Like I want to promote people who don't get promoted as much as I think they should. So yeah, your music, man, where can we check it out?
Yeah, so all I ask of people is just, which I think is the hardest thing to do, is just give it a listen. It's definitely not for everyone, but I think there'll definitely be at least one song. I've only got 6 songs out, and I think there'll at least be one song you enjoy, because they all are different genres and tastes. But Spotify, go to the YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, it'll be around somewhere. And I really appreciate even just giving it a shot. So yeah, and also thanks so much for having me, Liam. Really appreciate it. It was an interesting chat, and I think it's very good for the Australian music scene to have people like you in it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I mean, I'm only a very small person, so I'm just doing what I can from the bottom right now. But hey, man, let's hope that a few more people listen to your music, and maybe this time next year we can chat again and we can talk about that massive record deal that you've got with Sony Music or whoever it is, and that tour that you're doing in the UK or in America. That'll be cool, yeah?
It's a deal. That sounds like an absolute dream. Let's do it.
All right, cool. All right, well, let's finish it up there, eh? Thanks for chatting. And,
no worries.
Yeah, I'll maybe see you another time, man.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Liam. Catch up.
See ya.